Hello and welcome. Before we begin, feel free to subscribe and let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from, and how are you feeling today? Your presence here truly matters. They told me to sell my jewelry if I wanted to keep eating under their roof. Imagine that. A lifetime of sacrifice, reduced to a bracelet and a bowl of soup. I came here to heal, to rest. Instead, I became invisible in my own family's house. But what they forgot is this. I remember everything, and I don't vanish quietly. I hadn't planned on moving in with Trevor. That's the honest truth. I liked my little apartment in Missoula, even if the windows stuck in the summer and the radiator wheezed like an old man in winter. But after I slipped in the kitchen and cracked my hip on the cold tile, thank you spilled applesauce, everything changed. Just come stay with us, Mom, Trevor said over the phone, his voice syrupy and efficient, the way he used to sound when he wanted me to co-sign a loan. It's only until you're back on your feet. I didn't argue. Not then. It's hard to argue when you're lying in a hospital bed with a plastic bracelet cutting into your wrist and your backside going numb. And truth be told, I missed him. It had been years since we'd lived under the same roof. So I said yes. I packed what I could fit into 2 suitcases, clothes, my good kettle, and the carved wooden box with my jewelry and Paul's letters, and locked up the apartment. I told the manager I'd be gone maybe 6 months, tops. Temporary, I said. Just healing. He nodded like he'd heard it before. Trevor's house was big and beige, and sat on the curve of a cul-de-sac in Colorado Springs, where every other yard had the same solar-powered flamingos and live, laugh, love signs staked in mulch. The neighborhood smelled like lawn chemicals and distant ambition. Candice greeted me at the door wearing workout gear and a smile tight enough to crack teeth. "Hi, Grace," she said. "Not Mom, not even mother-in-law. Just Grace. We set you up downstairs." I kissed her cheek anyway. They gave me the guest room near the laundry, the one without windows, but with a framed print of lavender fields that looked like it had been bought in a bulk pack of hotel art. I told myself it was fine. Temporary. I brought my own bedding, folded the quilt Paul's mother made me back in '72, and unpacked slowly. My knees still ached. My back was sore from the flight, but I made the bed, lined my slippers up under the side table, and set the kettle on top of the mini-fridge like a declaration of peace. The first few days were manageable. The boys, Mason and Eli, were polite in that distracted, screen-glazed way kids are now. Candice worked from home, which seemed to involve a lot of headphones and smoothies. Trevor came in late from the office and disappeared early in the mornings. I tried to be helpful. Folded laundry, unloaded the dishwasher, made dinner. Nothing fancy. Baked chicken, rice, green beans, but hot and ready by 6. No one commented. The plates just filled and emptied while everyone scrolled. On Thursday, I went to pour myself a cup of tea and found my bank card missing. I keep it in the coin pocket of my purse, always have. It's where I also keep 3 mints, a Band-Aid, and a single aspirin, just in case. But the card wasn't there. I turned the purse inside out. Nothing. When I asked Trevor, he chuckled and said, "Oh, that? I used it for the internet bill. It was just easier to put it on yours. I'll pay you back." He said it like he'd borrowed a stick of gum, not tapped into my retirement checking. I didn't say anything then. I just nodded, smiled, and added it to the mental list of things I'd deal with later. Saturday morning, I found my recliner, the one piece of furniture I'd brought with me, sitting in the garage under a drop cloth. "It didn't really match the living room," Candice said, not looking up from her phone. "We needed space for the tree." It was October. I didn't ask for it back. Just stood there, blinking at the dust settling on the armrest. That evening, after dinner, Candice mentioned, very sweetly, very smoothly, that she was thinking about switching to organic groceries, and maybe I could help cover the difference. "Just until you're back on your feet," she added. "We're all tightening belts right now." Trevor said nothing, just sipped his beer and avoided my eyes. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Instead, I excused myself, went down to my basement room, and sat on the edge of the bed. I looked around at the framed lavender, the flickering light bulb, and the corner where my suitcase still stood, half zipped. The house was quiet above me, humming with laughter that didn't include me. I reached for Paul's box, opened the lid, and ran my fingers over the old velvet pouch where I kept the jewelry. Not much, just a few rings, the bracelet from my 40th birthday, and my mother's cameo brooch. I shut the box and turned off the lamp. Temporary, I told myself. Just temporary. By Tuesday, I had sold the brooch. It wasn't some grand gesture. No tears, no long goodbye. Just me standing at the counter of a pawn shop off Academy Boulevard, trying to explain to a young man with a lip ring that, yes, it was real gold. And no, I didn't have the paperwork. He weighed it like it was a potato. Offered me $140. I took it, put the cash in an envelope, and slid it into my purse next to the receipt, which I kept for no reason other than spite. Then I walked 2 blocks to the Walgreens and picked up my prescription, a bag of oranges, and the good lotion that Candice always said was too greasy. I didn't tell anyone. What was there to say? Your guest is quietly liquidating her history to afford kale and oat milk. That night, I made chili. Real chili, not the slow cooker kind with frozen corn and ground turkey. I browned the meat, used the last of the cumin I brought from my old place, even splurged on a small bottle of smoked paprika. By the time they came down for dinner, the house smelled like something alive. Like someone had tried, but no one commented. They just filled bowls and scrolled. Eli asked if we had shredded cheese. I said yes. He didn't say thank you. After dinner, Candice stood by the sink folding a dish towel in neat, nervous rectangles. She didn't look at me when she said, "We've been thinking about grocery budgeting." Trevor nodded, eyes on his phone. "It'd help if you chipped in." Doesn't have to be a lot. Just something. I looked down at my hands, still damp from washing dishes. I had just spent $67 on food that day, and I didn't have a car anymore to replace it. But I said nothing, just nodded. "Sure," I murmured. "I'll figure something out." That night, I went back down to my room and stared at the open box on the dresser. My wedding ring sat in the middle, next to a pair of pearl studs I hadn't worn since Paul's funeral. I shut the lid. On Thursday, Candice asked me not to use the main laundry anymore. "It's just too much overlap," she said, holding up a mesh bag of her workout clothes like it was proof. "You can use the stackable downstairs. It's better for light loads." The stackable machine was half broken, and the dryer door had to be held shut with a wooden spoon. I tried to laugh. She didn't. Later that evening, I caught Mason watching something on his tablet, a group text with his cousins. The message preview said, "Grandma's still here? Thought she was moving out?" He tilted the screen away fast, but not fast enough. On Friday, I paid the water bill. It wasn't large, just over $100. But the statement had come open on the counter, and it felt easier to just cover it than hear another passive-aggressive sigh from Candice about how utilities add up. I made the payment online. Then I closed the tab and stared at the screen until it went black. That night, they ordered Thai food. I hadn't been told. I found the empty cartons in the trash and the soy sauce packet still sticky on the counter. My chicken casserole sat in the fridge untouched. I wrapped it in foil and left it there, like a monument to bad timing. Saturday morning, I boiled eggs. No one else was up yet. The house was quiet in that way suburban houses are, insulated, humming with artificial air. I made toast, poured coffee, and sat alone at the kitchen table. Trevor came in, rubbing his eyes, barefoot, his hair still sleep-creased. He opened the fridge, stared, then turned. "You make coffee?" "It's on the counter," I said, not turning around. He poured a mug, sipped, and leaned against the counter. "Look, Mom," he began, voice low and casual. The way he always started when something ugly was coming. This isn't free, okay? We're not made of money. You live here, you eat here. We're not asking for rent, but you've got jewelry, right? I saw the bracelet. You could sell that. Help out a bit? I didn't speak, just stared at the butter dish. He cleared his throat. Sell your jewelry if you want to eat here. That's all I'm saying. I closed my purse. The snap of it sounded louder than I meant. He looked at me, startled. Then he scoffed, muttered something about overreacting, and left the kitchen. I stayed seated. My hand rested on the purse like it might try to open again. But it didn't. That evening, I didn't cook, didn't clean. I watched from the stairwell as Candace huffed about entitlement and microwaved frozen enchiladas. Trevor didn't say a word. I went back to my room and pulled out Paul's old velvet pouch. Nestled inside, under the ring and pearls, was a sealed envelope he'd written a year before he passed. For Grace, if things ever get difficult. I hadn't opened it. But I did now. The letter was dated in Paul's familiar scrawl, December 21st, the year before he died. I sat on the edge of the bed and unfolded the paper carefully, like it might fall apart from being held in my hands too late. It was short, as his letters always were. He didn't believe in rambling. Just the essentials, written in neat blue ink. If you're reading this, something's gone sideways. I know you, Grace. You'll try to make it work, bend yourself in half for everyone else. But don't forget what we built. You have power. Use it if you must. I set something up. Ask for Miss Anita Harris. She handled the trust. Love you. Don't let them shrink you. I read it twice, then a third time. Then I slipped it into the pocket of my robe and sat still until the hallway light under the door flickered and went dark. The next morning, I made an appointment with Anita Harris. Her office was in a modest building behind a strip mall that had seen better decades, the kind of place where the paint flakes just above the awning in the parking lot has those long, slow dips, like it's given up pretending to be level. Inside, though, it was tidy. No receptionist, just a bell on the counter and the smell of old carpet cleaner. She came out herself, a woman in her 60s with silver streaks in her dark hair and sensible shoes. Her handshake was dry and firm. Grace, she said, and there was no need to explain. She remembered Paul. I sat down across from her desk, trying not to wring my hands like I was waiting on a verdict. She pulled a manila folder from the cabinet and opened it without flourish. Your husband set up a trust. $50,000 in a separate account. The terms were clear. The funds are accessible only to his legal heirs, if and only if you provide written notarized consent. I stared at her. He never told me it was that much. She smiled softly. Paul planned quietly, but thoroughly. And if I don't consent? Then the funds sit. Or they go to the secondary designation you both signed off on, a foundation supporting elder housing and financial independence. He picked it. Said you'd understand I did. I signed nothing. I left with a copy of the trust terms and a business card. Back at the house, I made tea. I didn't offer any to Candice. I didn't ask if Trevor was home. I sat on the back patio by myself, watching Eli shoot baskets in the driveway while Mason kicked at a soccer ball like it owed him money. Neither of them looked at me. Later, I overheard Candice on the phone. She didn't even bother to whisper. She's sitting on it, I swear. I saw the paperwork in her purse. It's real money, and she's just hoarding it while we stretch every dollar. I didn't react. I just went to the downstairs room, opened my laptop, and logged into my online banking. The shared account I'd opened with Trevor after Paul passed was still active, though I hadn't touched it in nearly a year. I clicked through the transaction history. Dozens of automatic payments, utilities, Amazon, meal kits I'd never seen, all tagged to my routing number. I printed the statements. Then I opened a new tab and transferred every cent from that account, $14,623, into a new account in my name alone. I called the bank, asked them to block further access from the secondary user. The man on the phone hesitated. Is there a reason, ma'am? Yes, I said, because I said so. He processed it. I hung up. That night at dinner, Candice brought it up. By the way, she said, dabbing the corner of her mouth with a cloth napkin like she was on stage, Trevor noticed the joint account looks weird. Did something happen? I took a bite of salad, chewed slowly, swallowed. I closed it. The silence around the table was sharp. Eli looked up from his plate. Trevor set down his fork too hard. You what? You heard me. I didn't raise my voice. Trevor blinked. You didn't talk to me. That money was mine, I said. It's always been mine. You just got used to it being easy. Candice crossed her arms. That's incredibly selfish. I smiled. Then I suppose we're even. They didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. The dishwasher hummed. The boys retreated to their screens. Candice slammed a cabinet door. Trevor didn't say goodnight. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The overhead light buzzed faintly, a mosquito hum in the silence. The next morning, I woke early, packed the box, my jewelry, my papers, the velvet pouch. I left the casserole I'd made on the counter, covered in foil. Then I ordered an Uber, zipped my bag, and left the house without saying goodbye. They didn't call after me. I didn't expect them to. The Uber driver was a quiet man with kind eyes and a sticker on his dashboard that read, "Service dog on board," though there was no dog in sight. I didn't ask. He helped with my suitcase, even though I insisted I could manage it, and drove with the windows cracked just enough to let the cold morning air slip in. I sat in the back seat clutching my purse, feeling each bump in the road like it was etched into my bones. I didn't have a destination when I left the house. Not really. Just an idea. Distance. I asked him to drop me off at a motel near downtown, the kind with thin curtains and vending machines that only took quarters. I paid in cash. No one asked questions. The woman at the desk gave me a room on the second floor and slid a keycard across the counter with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. That night, I lay on a bed that smelled like bleach and old cigarettes, staring at the popcorn ceiling, wondering if Paul would have called this running or finally standing still. I didn't cry. I think I'd already done enough of that in the basement laundry room, trying to scrub resentment out of towels that weren't even mine. In the morning, I made a list. Not a sentimental one. Practical. I needed a place to live, a place where I didn't feel like a temporary guest in my own life. I needed legal help. I needed clarity. I took the bus to the public library and used a computer there to search senior housing options. That's where I saw it. An ad for a small cooperative community about 20 minutes away, a place called Silver Pines. For women 60 and older seeking independence, dignity, and community, it read. I clicked the link. There were pictures. Tidy one-bedroom units with little porches, community gardens, a book club, weekly potlucks. It didn't look like a nursing home. It looked like a choice. I filled out the inquiry form. Back at the motel, I sat on the bed and pulled out the printouts from the bank. I highlighted the unauthorized charges, made a list of dates. I called Anita Harris, the lawyer Paul had trusted. She agreed to meet me the next day. Bring everything, she said, including yourself. When I arrived, Anita's office smelled like lemon polish and strong coffee. She wore the same sensible shoes and a gray cardigan buttoned at the collar. I handed over the papers, and she read in silence, occasionally circling figures with a red pen. When she looked up, her expression had changed. Grace, she said carefully, this isn't just a misunderstanding. These are consistent withdrawals, all benefiting your son's household, with no record of consent. I never gave him permission, I said. I didn't even know half of it until last week. She nodded. Then it's not a family issue anymore. It's a legal one. She laid out options. We could freeze the trust indefinitely. We could file a financial elder abuse report. We could go to court if needed. I listened. I took notes. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like someone was standing beside me, not on top of me. I left the office and stood outside for a moment in the sun, blinking at how bright it was. At the bus stop, my phone buzzed. A security alert. Someone had tried to access my online banking account from an unrecognized device. Location: Colorado Springs. I knew the address. Their house. I called the bank immediately. The representative asked a few questions, then reassured me the attempt had been blocked. "Would you like to add additional security?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And note this: any future attempts like that are unauthorized. My son no longer has my permission for anything. Ever." The motel felt colder that night, but I didn't care. I drank tea from a styrofoam cup and read through housing applications. 2 days later, a response from Silver Pines. A unit was available. I could tour it next week. They encouraged me to bring a friend or family member. I laughed out loud when I read that. I had neither here. I took the tour alone. The woman showing me around was named Margaret, a retired teacher with a voice like warm oatmeal. She showed me the community room, the garden, the laundry facilities. When we entered the empty unit, a small sunlit space with honey-colored floors and a faint smell of lavender, I felt my lungs expand in a way they hadn't in months. "We're flexible with the deposit," she said gently, as if she could see the bruises beneath my cardigan. "I have it," I replied. I signed the lease that afternoon. Back at the motel, I began packing. What little I had: my clothes, my documents, the wooden box with Paul's pouch, and the trust documents. And then, one more thing, I called the property manager of my old apartment in Missoula. I told him to terminate the lease. "I thought you'd be back," he said. "I thought so too," I answered. "But things changed?" "No," I said, glancing around the small, bare motel room. "I did." The keys to my new apartment came with a lanyard that said, "Silver Pines, live proud." I didn't feel proud. Not yet. But I felt something close to intact. Moving in took less than an hour. A local church group helped deliver a small donated couch and a second-hand dining set. I unpacked my clothes, set out my kettle, and hung Paul's old flannel on the back of the door, like a prayer. The bedroom window faced east. In the morning, the sun poured in without asking permission. The quiet was different here. Not heavy, not watchful. Just mine. Anita called 2 days later. "The paperwork is filed," she said. "The financial review shows consistent patterns of unauthorized access. If you want to proceed, we can build a formal case." I asked her what that meant. "It means we'd be filing for restitution. And potentially reporting your son and his wife for financial elder abuse under state statute." I didn't answer right away. Not because I was unsure, I wasn't, but because saying it aloud felt like crossing into a country I didn't think I'd ever have to visit. I looked at my reflection in the microwave door, at the faint line between my brows that had deepened in recent years, and said, "Let's proceed." She exhaled softly. "I'll start drafting. We'll file an incident report with the police as well. You may be called to testify." I nodded. Good. That evening, I received an email from the bank. Another login attempt, blocked. I forwarded it to Anita, who replied with 2 words. "They're nervous." I slept better that night than I had in weeks. 3 days later, I got an invitation to attend a Sunday service at the church Trevor's family still went to. Not from them, of course, but from the church mailing list I was still on. "Honoring caregivers of the elderly," it said in loopy gold font. At first I deleted it. Then I dug it out of the trash folder. Sunday morning, I dressed with more care than usual. Slacks, blouse, pearls I hadn't sold. I brushed my hair back and looked myself in the mirror. My eyes were steady. That was new. The church foyer was warm and crowded. Folding chairs had been added to the back rows. People smiled as I passed, recognizing me vaguely. Grace, how are you? We miss seeing you. I nodded, offered small smiles, didn't elaborate. The service was the usual hum of guitars and polished teeth. Then came the honoring portion. Pastor Collins invited families up, one by one, to say a few words about how they were caring for their elders. When Candice and Trevor were called, I felt something sour rise in my throat. They walked up, all polished and sweet, with Eli trailing behind. Trevor spoke first, a rehearsed little speech about multi-generational living, how challenging but rewarding it was. Candice smiled the whole time, eyes shining like she was auditioning. Then she said it. We just feel so lucky to be able to give back to my husband's mother, after all she's done for us. That's when I stood up. I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice. But I walked to the center aisle, and I spoke. I don't mean to interrupt, I said, voice calm. But I think it's important people know what giving back looks like. Heads turned. Pastor Collins blinked. Candace went pale. I was asked to sell my jewelry to eat, I said. I was told to contribute while they used my money for their bills. I was moved into a basement room with no windows. My recliner was put in the garage, and when I left, they tried to access my bank accounts, more than once. The room had gone so quiet, I could hear someone's bracelet clink against a pew. I've filed a report. There is a legal case in motion. I don't say this to shame them. I say it because this is what some of us endure behind closed doors, and we shouldn't have to. No one clapped. No one spoke. I turned and walked back down the aisle. My knees shook, but my back was straight. Outside, the air was cool and clean. I walked 2 blocks to the bus stop, then rode home in silence, looking out the window at a town that had never felt like mine, and now suddenly did. That night, I opened my mailbox and found an envelope addressed in looping boyish handwriting. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper from Eli. Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't know everything. I miss your cooking. I miss you. I didn't know how to stop them. I hope you're okay. I read it 3 times, then set it on the table beside Paul's old box. The past was catching up to them, and I was already ahead. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Beige walls, humming fluorescents, chairs that wobbled if you shifted too much. It smelled faintly of industrial coffee and old paper. Anita sat beside me, calm and unreadable in her navy suit. Across the aisle, Trevor stared at the table in front of him, jaw tight, hands clenched. Candice wasn't there. The judge was a woman in her 50s with silver roots and tired eyes. She looked like someone who'd seen 1,000 family dramas and didn't want to see one more. Still, she listened. Patiently. Thoroughly. To the records Anita presented. To the bank statements. To the login attempts. To the fact that, over several months, more than $2,000 had been drained from my account for purchases I neither authorized nor even recognized. Groceries I never ate, gadgets I never used, charges from apps I didn't know existed. Then, Anita presented the trust documentation. She read aloud the clause Paul had written, the one about consent, the funds only being released to our son if I allowed it. The judge asked Trevor directly, "Did you attempt to access these funds without your mother's consent?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I thought she was confused. I thought it was family money. Anita didn't even blink. She wasn't, and it wasn't. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. Trevor was barred from accessing any account under my name, financial or otherwise. The joint accounts were dissolved. He was ordered to repay $2,400 to cover the unauthorized charges and legal fees. A restraining order was granted, 200 feet minimum, no contact without legal counsel. Candice never showed up, but her absence said enough. I didn't cry. I didn't gloat either. I just walked out of that courtroom with my head up and the sun in my face, like someone who finally remembered the shape of her own spine. Back at Silver Pines, I opened the window in my bedroom wide and let the late afternoon breeze pour in. It smelled like cut grass and honeysuckle from the community garden below. The walls were bare, but the space was mine. I'd hung Paul's flannel on a peg by the door, set the ceramic mug he gave me one Christmas on the windowsill, and filled the shelves with library books I'd been meaning to read for years. That evening, I took out the trust documents and made a quiet, final decision. I called Anita and asked her to amend the beneficiary terms. I want the funds to go to the Mountain Women's Housing Fund, I told her. The one that helps older women start over. No loopholes, no family contingencies. There was a pause. "You're sure?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Let that money help someone who doesn't have to beg for dignity." The next Sunday, I was invited to speak at a small event in town, a gathering of older women facing housing insecurity. They asked if I would share my experience. I stood in front of 20 strangers in folding chairs and told them what it meant to be invisible in your own family. I told them how it feels when your memories are picked apart and sold piece by piece. I told them how I stopped apologizing for taking up space. When I finished, no one clapped. They didn't have to. One woman reached over and took my hand. Another wiped her cheek. That was enough. That night, as I watered the spider plant on my windowsill, I found another envelope in the mailbox. It was from Eli again. "Grandma, I'm older now, and I understand better. You were right. I was just scared. I want to visit you one day, if that's okay. I still remember your casserole." I folded the letter and placed it next to Paul's velvet pouch, where I kept the only jewelry I hadn't sold, my mother's ring and the turquoise earrings Paul gave me in Santa Fe. I hadn't worn them in years. I put them on that night. Not because I needed to remember who I was, but because I finally didn't have to prove it to anyone. And for the first time in a long, long while, I made tea for one, and it tasted exactly like freedom.